During the COVID lockdowns of 2020, we had the BLM riots. Then after October 7th of 2023, we had over a year of masked Hamas sympathizers sowing disorder. And now it's open borders. But what you've got to understand is that these aren't organic, peaceful protests. They're coordinated displays of lawless radicalism with a slightly differentiated costume each time. The imagery isn't subtle, right? Keffiyehs, gas masks, Molotov cocktails, Mexican, Palestinian, and various, versions of the LGBTQIA alphabet flags. And it isn't spontaneous. It's trained, it's orchestrated, it's designed to provoke, destabilize, and ultimately intimidate. And that's what omni-cause leftism is. It's an ideological blob where every grievance converges into a single mass movement against order itself. But what I think it is still unclear is if the Democratic Party understands this, is that it's also utterly politically toxic. Rioting is near universally unpopular. Every shred of data tells us it hurts the left. Yet too few Democrats have the courage to go out there and say what the public already knows. Like that one clip from New York that went viral, I think yesterday, maybe the day before, where you've got a white progressive hipster Brooklynite blocking a black mom from driving to work, mocking her for caring about her kid. And he's sipping some 9% alcohol content booze can while he's doing it. So you're watching the modern left in its purest form. Drunk on moral vanity, blind to working class reality. And there's just no popular base for it. But there is an activist industrial complex that feeds off chaos, professional protesters ready to deploy anytime immigration law is enforced or the rule of law asserts itself.
And this weekend has been a clinic in such,
that's the case.
In such before. Jesus Christ, what a weekend. What a weekend. What a week it has been. We are live, or at least I'm live. Greetings to everyone here. This is Apostate Radio. I am your host, as always, Isaiah Carter. I am flying solo from uptown, the boogie down, and I am doing so without my dog, Mr. Nostra Chavez. Unfortunately, he will not be joining us tonight. The brother unfortunately sustained an injury last night, and he will not be making it. So it is just you and me and my guest right next to us. Matter of fact, before I get started and before I introduce this young man to the left, to the right of me, I guess, I want to just, that video that my guest here mentioned, so that we have a little context before we start.
But I have a kid. If I don't, and these people are having their children taken and their parents, what about my kids? If I lose my job, then what happens to my kids? I can't help you. But you can if you could just move out the way. You're not going to. How is this a peaceful protest if there's nothing to do? No, it's not.
How do y'all as white people feel about stopping a black woman from going to work?
Oh no, not work. I care so much.
So you don't care about stopping black people from going to work?
Look at this line that you guys are causing. I'm not causing no problems. I'm not trying to. We're just trying to leave.
Oh boy. That is the video that my guest here was talking about in the last bit of that video that I introduced with. This young man to my right, to the right on your screen, is, let me just make sure I get this correctly. This young man here is the executive director of External Affairs and the Chief of Staff at the Manhattan Institute, where he oversees government relations, outreach, polling, and special projects for the Manhattan Institute. Prior to the Manhattan Institute, Jesse worked as a pollster and project manager at Apple Cart, where he advised political campaigns, advocacy organizations, trade associations, and corporations. Jesse has also participated in the Public Interest Fellowship and worked for Senator Tom Cotton, Representative Dan Benishek, and the analytics arm of American Continental Group. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Mr. Jesse Arm. What's good, brother?
Great to be here with you, man. It's weird watching the clip of me sitting in the same spot. What we record, that clip was from the City Journal podcast, which is the affiliate magazine of the Manhattan Institute. And we record pretty early in the morning, and I'm here with you, well into the evening here in the nighttime hours. So it's an eerie feeling watching it play back to me. I've still got my coffee here right beside me, just force of habit, but it's decaf. So, won't keep me up all night, hopefully.
Hopefully not the same coffee that you had 3 days ago.
No, definitely a different one. And I like how you say I'm to your right. I don't know. I've been inspecting your tweets. I'm definitely to your right on the screen right now, but I think I'm still to your right ideologically too, but maybe we'll suss that out over the next period of time we're talking here now.
Well, you might be correct, and we'll see, because we do have a lot to get to. But before I get started, let me just do this. You can follow us, ladies and gentlemen, as always, at Isaiah L. Carter. You can also follow Nostra Chavez on the same platforms as Nostra Chavez. Our show platform is Apostate Radio NY. You can follow our show platform for updates to our show, any events, stuff like that. We're slowly building this thing out, and we are doing so really by the grace of God and with a lot of your support. We're really thankful for it all. If you do decide, if you feel so inclined to support the show financially, you can do so at buymeacoffee.com/apostate radio. And that's about it as far as I'm concerned. Jess, Mr. Arm, if you could, sir, for the benefit of our audience, would you please introduce yourself and tell everybody who it is? I mean, I read a little bit of the intro, but if you just introduce yourself and let everybody know, let the good folks know who you are and what you got going on.
Absolutely, will do. Well, thank you again so much for having me. My background is I'm a Midwesterner, born in Chicago, raised in the Detroit area. That's why I've got my, Michigan art behind me in the background. I've worked in the political arena since I was honestly as young as middle school, knocking doors for state legislator campaigns and really anyone who would have me as an intern. Went to the University of Michigan, where I got a degree in political economy. Throughout my time in school, worked with, again, kind of a lot of different people in the policy arena. Then worked for a number of years in particularly the data analytics side of politics. Did a lot of work on polling, predictive modeling, and some of the other kind of analytics tools that can be used in a advocacy context to score wins for different players who want to make their mark in the policy arena. And then just under 5 years ago, I joined an organization called the Manhattan Institute, which is a public policy think tank. It's a collection of advocacy people, journalists, public intellectuals, writers, people who you might otherwise find in academia or in the political arena, maybe as an activist of some kind, who all kind of hang their hat under one banner. And our strategic focus is keeping cities and streets safe, encouraging economic dynamism, protecting kids and families, and really kind of doing everything we can to defend colorblind equality. So that's kind of what I spend my days doing now. My emphasis there is on some of the stuff that you described, Isaiah, government relations. So making the case not just to other wonky public policy people who are caught up in the details like us, but to lawmakers and regular folks. So I do the communicating on that front. I also lead our polling and public opinion program. We'll have some interesting polling coming out in just the next day or so on the New York City mayoral election, which I'm sure we'll dig into. I'm sure it's of concern to your listeners. And yeah, that's that. And I'm the chief of staff there, so I just kind of help make sure the trains run on time.
Well, that's what's up, man. I really appreciate you. Really appreciate you stopping by. Let's get into this. Shout to Officer Tatum. I didn't mean to. I know that's his slogan. I didn't mean to take that. But let's get into. I want to start off with these protests. No kings. It's like I've never. It's almost as if the second that interview dropped, we saw exactly what you were talking about.
Yeah,
and like we saw the long line of. I've been bookmarking all sorts of craziness over the last couple of days with, from ICE rate, from the protests happening in front of Newark's ICE facility, some of the protests that were happening here in New York and elsewhere, just absolute madness everywhere we looked. And my question to you, was all of this effective? I mean, we know who this was. We know who this stuff was bought and paid for the most part. But do you think it was effective? Do you think all of this was effective? And if so, how?
It's a great question, right? Because I'm not exactly sure who it's for, right? It doesn't seem like at this point the No Kings protest were aimed at winning over hearts and minds. The average age at one of these protests was like 60 to 70 years old. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for the Democratic base now, right? Which is older, white, college educated, fairly well-to-do people who spend a lot of time watching traditional cable news and online and places like Blue Sky, worrying themselves into a tizzy about everything that's going on in the world. So these are the people that came out in the past couple of days. There weren't big crowds. There were numbers of people that showed up, but it wasn't the scenes of the Women's March in Washington, D.C. during Donald Trump's first term, which, had a whole nother series of problems with, and we could layer a whole different lens of analysis on it. But the scenes that played out across the country the other day were so bizarre. I mean, let's think about what they were in reaction to, right? We did a military parade to celebrate the 250th anniversary of the United States in our backyard in Washington, D.C.
Absolutely.
1991, we did the same thing. President George Bush Sr. was there. I saw a report from CBS News the other day of them covering it. It was like, having stepped into a time capsule. You've got people, mainstream anchors on mainstream news channel, celebrating the fact that tanks, planes, troops, and American flags were going to be marching right down near the ellipse in Washington. The bizarre thing is that the American people didn't change, the media did, right? So you saw the media, and they've been successful, I think, in compelling some number of the electorate, the people who showed up to these No Kings protests, to panic and to stir trouble and make noise. But the majority of the American people still think tanks, planes, and the army are really cool. And today's left is kind of just too, I think, has this performative miserableness about it, right? To stomach a little bit of American pride and a little bit of a celebration of everything our military means to us, what they do to protect us, and a lot of this was just right, like soldiers dressing up in different uniforms from different eras of American history. It was a bizarre thing, I think, to organize a protest around, and I'm still not entirely certain what the goal of it was. I don't know what it sought to accomplish, so it's really difficult to answer the question of whether or not it was effective.
Well, I mean, for me, I think it was effective. I do think they were effective. And here's what I mean by that. They were effective in further heightening the contradictions between who the left has become now and what conservatism actually is now. What constitutes as real conservatism. What we're dealing with, in terms of what we're dealing with, the American left has gone absolutely insane. We are seeing people who are completely divorced from reality. Notice the only people who were calling Donald Trump a king were leftists. Leftists were the only ones doing this. The leftists were the only ones describing Donald Trump as a king. And it's like, they took what I saw was they took the coincidence of Donald Trump's birthday being on June 14th. I am a birthday neighbor of the man, by the way.
Oh, nice. Happy birthday.
Thank you. Yeah, my birthday is on the 12th. They took the coincidence of the man's birth, of the day of the man's birth, and made that the focus instead of the 250th anniversary birthday of the United States Army, which is what this was actually always about. And correct me if I'm wrong, but this was already planned before Trump took office. Am I correct about that?
I don't know. I'm not a fan. I don't know. But I'll tell you this. If I were the president and I were organizing a series of celebrations to celebrate America's 250th year, and my birthday fell on a Saturday in the middle of summer, I might have the parade on my birthday. I doubt I would have even been asked or consulted about making the decision. I can tell you, as someone who's worked closely with the administration and previous administrations too, there are about 9 to 10, a million layers of advanced people you've got to go through, security considerations, logistical matters. Does it work for the Speaker of the House? Does it work for the President of the Senate? Does it work for every cabinet secretary? We're not anchoring things and deciding upon things to make sure it lines up with the president's birthday. So it's entirely like you said, the left latched on to an obscure factoid associated with the fact that this thing was going on to celebrate the country, to celebrate the military, to celebrate everything that America stands for. And they're the ones who made it about Trump. Trump didn't make it about Trump. And if you watched any of the pomp and circumstance, look, President Trump, I like him, but he does some things that are gaudy. There was nothing gaudy associated with this. It was about the troops. It was about the military.
Yeah, I didn't see anything gaudy about the celebrations either. They seem like, again, and full disclosure, I served in the Army. My dad served in the Army, so I have that automatic bias of you're not going to say anything bad about the U.S. Army, and I'm not going to and I'm not going to take some kind of offense to it. My thing is this: it's like y'all were the only ones, meaning Democrats. Democrats were the only ones referring to Donald Trump as a king. And I find it hilarious that this is the same political party that has that tried to decree their way out of COVID. They turned the undemocratic way in which they brought Kamala Harris into the Democrat candidacy after Biden's brains leaked out of his ears on national TV. I find it. I mean, I find it really disgusting that, I mean, they disenfranchised 14 million of their own voters and somehow managed to get $100 million and what is that? $100 million and all 1,300 delegates that Kamala needed in less than a week. That don't seem that's some king shit if we're going to talk about it. I mean, if we're going to be perfectly
Not just that,
clear.
but Isaiah, these protests, they were called the No Kings and Tyrants protests, I believe. But do you know that they did you see what happened in Canada? They celebrated No King's Day in Canada too, but they had to change the name because they actually do have a king there. So the progressives, just to the north, had to call it No Tyrants protest or something like that. I thought that was a particularly cute one, but it goes back to the point, right? I think fundamentally this isn't about protestations of a king. This is about it's about what all of this is about. It's about the progressive omni cause, right? It's about trans, it's about Palestine, it's about immigration, open borders. It's about something different every day, but it's the same people congregating under the same umbrella. And I think ultimately what that clip that you showed at the top of the podcast, not the one of me, forget that one, but the secondary one, right? Of the guy who's, giving it to a black mom because she wants to go pick up her kid, because she's got work to get to, because she's got something to do rather than drink booze and protest in the middle and block traffic in the middle of the afternoon on a weekday. And the guy's response, the hipster Brooklynite ponytail guy, is work?
Not work.
Work?
No,
I care
not
so
work.
much. Because that, for them, the work is the protest. The money has made that possible for a lot of these people, right? Like some of them are just rich kids who are living off their parents' cash and doing this as layabouts. For others, they're getting paid to be there, directly or indirectly, through through a donor directly or through a nonprofit group that's been set up purely to astroturf this kind of nonsense perpetually. But this is the game now. These are shock troops in a war for a progressive movement that is ultimately primarily just invested in sowing disorder.
Yeah. And in fact, I mean, this is Alex Jones posted this earlier today. Notice anything about this crowd of No Kings protesters? They are all old white boomers that think they still have power over everyone else. They are the past. We, the people, are the future. And I could not agree. I could not agree more with the big man there. Our friend Jason Curtis Anderson says omni cause plus omni protest plus omni funding equals omni riot. I couldn't agree more with that statement. I mean, that guy in particular is an interesting case, because that the ponytail boy, that guy actually, hold on, I'm just gonna look it up real quick. I should have had it pulled up now that I'm but let me see, because his first name is Trevor. That guy actually was he won a settlement last year. Yeah, Trevor Britvec. Yeah, that's him. Trevor Britvec won $115,000 settlement from the city of New York after the 2020 riots.
Wow,
it's crazy. Yeah, this guy. Yeah, this guy is a.
This settlement was relating to protests in 2020.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, he's what? Yeah, look at this fucking guy. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. having lived here, I've lived here in New York almost 10 years. It'll be 10 years in a couple days. I'm originally from Baltimore, Maryland. To see that guy right there is the archetype of everything that's wrong with New York City right now. He's the archetype. The guy that don't do anything, the guy that just sits up and like you said, he's got whatever beer he was drinking was 9%. So this is effing happy hour.
We're Four Loko territory. I think we're past beer at that point. But look, that guy, demographically also fits the profile of everybody who's getting behind this upstart, insurgent, progressive mayoral candidate right now in Zoran Mamdani. This is his base. These are young 18 to 34 New Yorkers, heavily in Brooklyn, almost all college educated, who are largely male and largely white. Andrew Cuomo is performing particularly well and obviously these are Democratic primary voters and Democratic polls, so we're not even taking conservatives into account. And there's some interesting stuff going on with men and women and the gender divide, right and left, in the Republican Party that we can get into later. But within this Democratic primary, I think it's just fascinating that Zoran is overperforming so much with men, young men.
Really?
Young male Democrats. Young male Democrats. The women are sticking
overperforming with men
in the Democratic primary. Yeah, it's the progressive bros who like this guy, and women gravitate much more toward Cuomo, and that goes downstream from it, or rather, it maps very cleanly onto issue prioritization. Right. So you've got men who are talking more about housing costs. Women who are talking more about crime and safety. And
hold on a second.
Yeah.
Zoran is actually trending higher with men here in New York City. I did not know that.
In the context of the Democratic primary, yes. I'm providing some sneak preview details on some of the polling and new data that we'll be releasing just the next day or two. But this is consistent across all of the public polling that's been out there to date. Mamdani does particularly well in the context of the Democratic primary with young, college-educated, white males who care more about housing costs and a lot of other progressive social issues than they do about crime. Those who care more about crime gravitate much more toward Cuomo in the context of the Democratic primary. Now, look, if you were to port that over and look at the whole electorate, right? Men are much more conservative than women. So I'm sure that would be balanced out a little bit. But once you're looking into the pool of the Democrats, the left of center people themselves, it is the case that the most kind of, aggressive ones are backing Mamdani in the Democratic primary.
That is insane. That is absolutely insane to me. Like I've never understood, just to be honest, I've never understood Zoran's appeal. And most of Zoran's biggest public facing supporters, at least on social media, have always, to me, appeared to be women. Like this guy, I mean, I'm shocked to hear that this man is trending so hard. I mean, do you know, so we're talking about the guys who were Bernie bros 10 years ago, essentially. Like they're still looking for that guy to follow behind. I find that absolutely insane. I mean, and then when I saw a video of a rally he did at Terminal 5 over on the West Side. That guy, he's got like a brass a brass band or something like that. Like they're in the, like they were dancing around in the rafters. I'm like, what the hell am I looking at? This, like, there's something about this dude, and I'm gonna find that clip. But there's something about that guy that gives me serious Jim Jones vibes. I don't know if I don't know what you're getting, but that's what I'm catching off of him, and it's just not, it's not good. It's not good with him.
I think he's a more talented politician than a lot of the other progressives we've seen come through city politics over the course of the last decade. And you referred back to the Bernie bro phenomenon of 10 years ago, right? But I look at this cross endorsement that Mamdani had the other day with Brad Lander, the city's comptroller, another really, really progressive guy, really far left guy, but who has tried to position himself, at least, as a little bit more of the, I've been in government, I had a major role throughout the city, a more of a technocratic option in the context of this race. Bernie wasn't so good at that 10 years ago, right? Bernie didn't do what he needed to do to bring over those Elizabeth Warren voters in the Democratic primary. Zoran is a different animal. Zoran is coming to the fore and saying, what do you want me to talk? You wanted me to talk to Brad Lander? Sure, I endorse you, Brad Lander, too, because he knows he's got the hard left locked up. He locked in the loony left early, and that made, and he knew the New York Times wasn't endorsing in this election, so that kind of center of the Democratic Party, right? Think college educated and white, yes, but maybe a little bit older. The people who maybe 4 years ago voted for Catherine Garcia, the city's trash commissioner. That block was up for grabs. So Mamdani said, sure, I'll kind of mouth what you want me to mouth. You want me to talk about Ezra Klein's book, Abundance? You want me to talk about housing? Whatever. Because ultimately, I think for a guy like Mamdani, it doesn't really matter what he says, because his economic policies, his crime policies, his social policies are all so radical that you genuinely have to ask the question, is this guy just trying to incept toward collapse? This is what, by the way, he's openly a socialist. This is what socialists do. This is what they do in Latin America, right? They consolidate power. Many of them get elected, sometimes democratically. They give lofty, lofty promises. And then they kind of crash the system, right? So he can say whatever he wants. Yeah, sure, private development too. But if he's freezing rent and he's putting homeless shelters inside of the subway system and drug distribution centers everywhere, it almost doesn't matter what you're saying about private development, building a high-rise or whatever.
Freezing.
You get some of the...
Yep.
Oh. Better now? Uh-oh.
Okay, yeah. You're, run that back like about 5 seconds.
The bottom line is... Sure. Am I clear now?
Oh my God. I do not know why I'm losing you, sir.
Uh-oh. I think my connection is okay.
Say that one more. Yeah. Mine is, I don't know what's going on with mine. I have no idea why I'm so unstable. Why the connection is so unstable. But so say that, like, I missed nearly everything you just said. If as best as you're able to, please. I'm so sorry, man. Like, if you
no problem.
Could you run again, please?
I think the bottom line is that socialists seek to crash the system, so they're happy to offer promises to more moderate folks along the way, because they know that the policies they're going to enact upon getting into office, many of them spelled out directly on Mamdani's campaign site. If you go check out the details, there's going to be an effort to kind of crash the system here. So he's a talented politician. He's saying the right things. He's winning people over from different parts of the left that might have been uncomfortable with him off the ballot. But people also want to vote for a winner. And there's a little bit of, they've got an effective media operation now too. They're seeding this narrative in the press around the Mamdani surge. Politico covered a poll that I thought was really interesting. It was a Working Families Party and Mamdani campaign funded poll, but it also didn't have ranked choice voting. It was just a head-to-head, Mamdani Cuomo. And then that was the revelation that Mamdani's in the lead. But that's not really how the election works. So that's not a good poll. But I think you have to begin asking the question, why are they seeding this narrative? And I think it's because they're a talented bunch and they're smart politicians. I don't agree with them on policy, but they're running a damn good campaign so far.
But at that point, it's like, well, who are they running this for? Because here's my thing. You've got 22, Zoran claimed to have like 22,000 canvassers working for him. When I was living I just moved from Brooklyn. I was living in Brooklyn, going on 5 years. I saw not a single Zoran a canvasser in my neighborhood. I lived in Brownsville. I hadn't seen one single person of his. They didn't knock on my door. They didn't talk to any of my neighbors on to the left or to the right of me. Nobody. So I don't know who I don't know who this is. I don't know who this campaign is for. You know, when I talk to when I've talked to other people like on X and everything else, like this guy is only really trending in what in what Jason calls the kombucha corridor. He's only talking to people in Astoria, Long Island City, Greenpoint, Williamsburg, Dumbo, and maybe Fort Greene, Park Slope, Cobble Hill, Carroll Gardens, and Crown Heights, Bed-Stuy. He's not talking. He's basically talking to the gentrifier set.
Yeah,
he's not talking to black people. He's not, and he's damn sure if he's in the Bronx, where I am right now, he's down there in the South Bronx with all those new buildings around Bruckner Boulevard. He ain't talking to nobody here. I have no idea. Again, like Zoran is this. He's this. That's why I said earlier, he gives me Jim Jones vibes. There is a cult energy around him, and I don't think that. I mean, I personally don't think the Democrats aren't prepared really to handle this guy, at least not in my opinion.
Yeah, that's an interesting.
And for that matter, sorry to cut you off. For that matter, I don't even know if Republicans are.
Yeah,
and we're going to talk.
That's an interesting point. Black people are the Cuomo firewall. Black voters in New York City are in lockstep not voting for Zoran. They're not as progressive. And that's kind of the grand irony here, right? Like Zoran, the great left-wing hope, is the candidate of the gentrifiers, right? In all those neighborhoods that you mentioned, those are the people who are backing him. That's a really telling reality. And we'll see what it reveals. I think he's going to come up short on election day, but I think that it's a wise strategic. I think he knows that he's not going to move hearts and minds among a lot of black and brown voters around New York City, because a lot of black and brown voters around New York City are a lot less progressive. So it makes more sense for a guy like Zoran to cross-endorse with Brad Lander. It makes more sense for Zoran to suddenly start talking about, oh, I'm a YIMBY on housing, private development's not so bad, because the people he needs to win and the political faction that he can maybe pick off, they're not black folks living in the Bronx. They're never going to vote for a socialist like Zoran. They are technocrats living in Manhattan high-rises who are college educated and look like other Zoran voters, but are just a little bit older and have a little bit more money, right? And so are a little bit more concerned about their taxes. So that's the audience that he, in the final days here, has been heavily, heavily targeting. And I think he'll come close. But the Cuomo base of support, Cuomo's front-runner status in this primary race has been really strong since day one.
Yep.
And the fundamentals still suggest that Andrew Cuomo should bring this thing home. But we'll see what kind of hijinks goes on the next couple of days. If you can get Adrienne Adams, the council speaker, who does second best with Black people in this race, maybe she cross-endorses Zohran Mamdani. Maybe that changes things a little bit in the final days. There are ways I could see him pulling it out. And like you said, right, if he does pull it out, I think the Democratic Party almost changes overnight. I mean, another guy, a great Republican pollster by the name of Patrick Ruffini, has been writing and posting a lot about Mamdani, and he holds the view, and I think it's a smart one, that Democratic Party politics changes overnight, and Zohran Mamdani very well may become the face of the Democratic Party if he pulls this thing out. But I want to temper expectations, because I think that there's actually a pretty good chance we go into a general election that features both Andrew Cuomo and Zohran Mamdani.
I think so too. Because one of them,
and that's a whole nother can of worms.
I personally, I mean, if we're going to be honest, I think we're going to end up with a plurality. We had Seneca Scott on last week, and he was talking about how, and he was discussing ranked choice voting, and how ranked choice voting is like manufacturing a lot of false pluralities. And granted, the dry run for that is, of course, the Democrat primary, which you've got your front runner, and then you've got like all these other, you've got like, what, 73 total candidates running for mayor. I do want to ask you this. This is just picking your brain a little bit. Why do you think this has become such an important matter? Why do you think, in terms of the grand scheme of things, like we both know that whatever happens here in New York City, and ultimately New York State being the East Coast bastion of the machine state, of the Democrat machine, we know how important this election is, and we know that everyone is going to have eyes on it nationwide. But my question to you is, what are your thoughts regarding that? Like, why do you think that is?
Specifically on the ranked choice voting question, or in this race in aggregate? Well, let me riff on ranked choice voting for a second. And can you hear me all right? Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, cool. Mm-hmm. Got it. I'm going to riff on the ranked choice voting for a second, talk about that for a little bit, and then maybe I'll talk about just in general, I think, why a lot of people are paying attention to this race. So in this contest, currently, Cuomo is topping the field, roughly 40% or just under that. Mamdani is in the high 20s, but ranked choice voting, thanks to that, second and third preferences may upend those raw numbers. So with RCV, which allows New Yorkers to rank up to 5 candidates, so if no one gets to 50% in the first round, the lowest polling candidate is eliminated and their votes get redistributed. That could elevate a guy like Mamdani, if he's the consistent second choice of voters, or people who just don't like Cuomo, because a lot of people don't like Cuomo and a lot of people don't know who Mamdani is. A lot of people are hearing their first, this is an argument, by the way, that maybe why the Cuomo campaign should have gone negative on Mamdani a lot earlier, because even still, Mamdani remains heavily undefined. Most New York City voters are going to see 1 or 2 pieces of information about Mamdani in the last month up until a week from Tuesday, election day. And whether it's good or bad could really heavily impact whether they rank him. And so you're ranking candidates you know very little about. The system was offered as a promise to reduce spoilers and ensure that you have a mayor who has majority support. But critics have pointed out that it does confuse voters And it skews results potentially to ideologically extreme candidates in this instance. And it empowers coalition building behind the scenes. Now, ranked choice voting was actually sort of promised to do exactly the opposite, and that it would empower more moderate candidates. But that's not proving to be the case. So
far from it.
And then at the more macro level, right? Why are people paying attention to this election? Well, it's New York City. It's the center of the world. It's the biggest city in America and the most important city in the world. So obviously, folks are going to care about it. And we got a test run a couple of years ago with Brandon Johnson in Chicago, who is a progressive of a similar ilk to Mamdani, although I don't think they're, exactly the same kind of candidate. I think Johnson in Chicago leans a little bit more into the race hustling aspect, whereas Mamdani in New York is more of like an all-out class warfare guy. Mamdani's parents are like super rich. Like his parents are like, his mother is like a very successful Bollywood film director, and his father is like a communist radical academic. I think he was affiliated with like Columbia or NYU.
Columbia. I think it was Columbia University, if I'm not mistaken.
So these are two different kinds. I believe it is Columbia. Yeah, these are two different kinds of radicals. Mamdani is scarier because he's more capable of a politician. So Mamdani could theoretically win and develop a program and crash the system and then blame the elites for crashing it. I think the real tension right now is that, and there are dumb Republicans who I don't think are doing this, but fundamentally like smart Republicans recognize wisely, and I think the president understands this, that and the president is evidence of this, the American people who are frustrated, who feel they're not making ends meet, who want to be wealthier and who want to be freer and who want to be able to do the things they want to do with ease, raise families and feel comfort, they don't hate the CEOs. They hate HR. I think that's the bet Republicans are making, that it's the managerial class. It's the people who are bogging things down, making things slow, making you sit through your HR training or your equity seminar or your sexual harassment session that everybody just clicks through to get through because it's required by their employer. I think the Republicans who are intelligent are kind of making the bet that that's the problem that's stunting growth in the country right now. Whereas progressives like Mamdani say, no, it's the bosses, it's the CEOs, it's the people who are creating wealth. So we need less wealth and we need to redistribute it all around. We have enough wealth and it just needs to be shared around. Whereas Republicans are kind of more at the national level making the case, no, just grow. And there are some, I think, smart Democrats who are beginning to make that case as well. But I just don't think they're likely to be successful at it because
my issue with that is Trump actually does have it correct when we talk about that war with the professional class. There honestly is a disconnect between the laptop class that have absolutely no marketable skills whatsoever except tapping on a friggin' keyboard and telling people what to do, and those in the blue collar, in the municipal jobs, the doers, the electricians, the carpenters, the plumbers, the cops, the firefighters, EMS, that type of thing. Those are the ones these are the people who are actually building the country. And unfortunately, guys like Zoran and other communist Democrats, because I'm a little bit less forgiving of the party because I used to be a Democrat really not too long ago, and I've watched this progression into becoming just a full-blown communist cult. I mean, we saw a lot of this over this past weekend. We saw this with with the riots and everything, with the riots in LA and everything else. So I think Trump's probably got his finger on the button in terms of who's actually, and again, it's also when you think of entryism, when you think of who these people are, that like how have these people been able to build and consolidate power? Well, they had to go into they had to control the hiring departments. They had to control who was being brought into these places. And like I said, and so that's part of the divide, right? That's part of, again, Trump has it right, but this notion that, like you said with Zoran, just keep on hitting at the top and hitting at the top. All that's doing is creating class envy, which is all socialists and Marxists. That's all they're able to do. I mean, just out of curiosity, how many people, because I do want to switch gears in a few moments. But my question to you is, how many people do you think, just your day to day, how many people do you see are aware of what kind of guy Zoran really is, and really all of the and the rest of these people who are running for office, who are running for mayor in New York City? Like, are people in your experience, are they well aware of who this guy is, or are there still questions?
Zoran Mamdani's name ID remains very low. People do not know who he is. Like I said earlier, people are likely to hear maybe one piece of news about a candidate. That's likely voters, by the way. Even likely voters are not high information voters per se. So they may see one ad, they may see one Instagram video, good or bad. Could be a clip of you and me talking, the clip you played at the top of the podcast, or one just like it, in which I've highlighted some of my concerns about a number of Mamdani's policies. I mean, look, Mamdani is running the most unapologetically socialist campaign in a century. He's proposing to deliver free buses, taxpayer-run grocery stores, shuttering child protection. It's a populist fantasy tour masquerading. Yeah, it's a populist fantasy tour masquerading as governance. And I think New York is really too fragile to fund the fairy tale. So people don't know is the answer. People do know Andrew Cuomo. A lot of them don't like him. His unfavorables are very high. You're going to see, you already see polling coming out. Most of the news that goes out there about Zoran either comes from Zoran and his allies, or it comes from media that is excited about a new progressive hope. So that means that he's probably going to win more hearts than he is going to push people away. Had one of these campaigns gone negative earlier, maybe you can argue Monday morning quarterbacking, but maybe you can argue that things would have gone better and this race wouldn't be as close as it is. But on the other hand, that would have elevated his name ID, that would have put him more on the map, and that would have, led more people to say, hey, just good people who I think read a lot about these ideas on paper and think, oh yeah, why shouldn't the buses be free? Oh yeah, why shouldn't there be space for homeless people in the subway station? Theoretically, I don't think people are enraged by that off the bat, but you stop and you explain to them, hey, but if you have homeless shelters in the subway station, you're going to have a lot more homeless people causing scenes on the subway. You're going to have a lot more crime on the subway. You're going to have a lot more drugs on the subway. Hey, if you make the buses free, probably going to have a lot more homeless people on the buses. You're probably going to have a lot more drugs on the buses. You're going to have a lot more crime on the buses. The buses are going to run slower because they've got to deal with those things. So there's going to be fewer buses. The buses are going to get trashed. That means the buses are going to have their seats replaced. That's going to cost taxpayers money. That's going to cost you money. So voters are great, but voters aren't all smart. It's just the reality. So they've got to, the messaging challenge is on folks like Cuomo and the candidates who are running against Zoran to articulate the problems that his policies would invite. And they're just getting to that now, and it might be too late.
Well, here's the thing that gets me about Zoran and this whole fast free bus nonsense. He doesn't have the jurisdiction to even make a promise like that. New York City Transit is a state agency. The Metropolitan Transportation Authority is a state agency, meaning you got to be the governor before you can make promises like that, hun. And most people just and most people like when you explain it to them like that, and I've told this to people, like this guy has no jurisdiction to even make the promise of buses should be fast and free. It's ridiculous. It's a pipe dream. He's literally telling people whatever they want to hear to get him elected. And what ends up happening is you end up with guys like this. Who I stumbled across just a second ago. This guy, Good Morning Kensington, Brooklyn, which is that's a kind of a middle class part of Brooklyn, just below Prospect Park. I just voted mayor. He did all the ranking. He ranked Zoran, he ranked Brad, he ranked Adrian, he ranked Zelnor, and he ranked Michael. I don't know who the Michael is.
That's Michael Blake. He's polling at about like 2%, I think.
Okay. And then city council, 1+ only Shahana, comptroller Justin, Brannon, and Mark, and public advocate Jumani. And look at this guy, Gregory Wright, born in Kansas. So but celebrate decades with my Brooklyn neighbors, eternal lover of history, plus hopeful cisgender. Is this guy even fucking real?
I just think it's a little interesting that he had every mayoral candidate and other citywide office candidate on a first name basis. But what was that? Shahana Hanif got the full name. I wonder why. It's kind of an interesting choice there.
Yeah, I mean, oh God, like the contempt I have for these types of people. That is this guy right here is the quintessential midwestern gentrifying leftist who comes into this town and think they can just run stuff. When I moved here, I've been here 10 years, not once. And this is, and again, this isn't tooting my own horn. This guy, like when I came here 10 years ago, not once did I think myself so highly that I could come in here and immediately start to order people around. You're making like not once did I think to myself, well, I come from Baltimore. Maybe if I bring some of my small town wisdom to a 5-borough city of 8.5 million people, maybe, I'll be able to lead the city and they'll welcome me like a hero. I'm sorry. That is some gentrifying nonsense that only people who come from privileged backgrounds could ever come up with. It makes me sad because a lot of people, again, this is the energy that's been at the heart of all of these of everything that we've seen all weekend long. I got some comments I want to read. Jason Curtis, Jason Anderson he said his dad, Zoran's dad, is a thought leader and pioneer in decolonization classes. So oh great, this guy is he's the son of a Fanonite. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, please read Frantz Fanon's The Wretched of the Earth. Frantz Fanon was a bad dude. He was a very violent guy, too. Let's see. Paul N., who's a good friend of mine. Hey, Paul, said Kamala and Mayor Pete's dad were both Marxist professors, too. Kamala's dad was a professor at Stanford. And I think it was George. I can't remember his first name. No, Joseph Buttigieg, Mayor Pete's dad. He was the one who, if I remember correctly, he translated some communist text into Norwegian or something like that. I can't remember. Jason also said, nailed it. Zoran can't deliver making anything cheaper for the masses. And Google Caninas, Justin Brannon's band, where the lead singer is a pit bull? Oh my God. Caninus?
Like the dog?
Are you sure?
Oh,
Like
Caninus,
the dog?
Yeah,
Oh, oh no. Okay, Paul corrected me. He was a Gramsci disciple. Oh boy, that's even worse. Antonio Gramsci was I guess you could say he was the co-author of fascism along with Benito Mussolini. He was the one who said that socialism was precisely the religion that must overwhelm the West. So thanks for that, Paul. Really appreciate that. I want to switch gears now because we're doing all this. Yeah, because we're doing all this talking about how dangerous Zoran is. And he is. I mean, Zoran is a bad guy, and he's radioactive. I am, like, me personally, I am not ranking that guy, and everyone else should do the same. I'm only ranking one, maybe two people. But I have but here's a beef that I've had with the Republican Party.
Isaiah, before we jump into the Republican Party, can I say one last thing about the Mamdani and this mayoral election? I do just want to say, to close out on this, because I think the substance here matters a little bit more. I just want to make sure I get this across. If you want a preview of where progressive politics is headed in cities like New York, you really should look no further than this guy's campaign. Because, again, he's not just a left-wing candidate. He's a throwback to early 20th century socialism, but with like a 2025 branding strategy. He's pitching city-run grocery stores, a new municipal department of community safety to replace the NYPD, and free bus services across the 5 boroughs, all while proposing the kind of rent control regime that would make it really impossible to build or maintain new housing stock. So there's no fiscal realism there. Mamdani is campaigning in a fantasy world where the city can spend endlessly, take over entire sectors of the economy, and they can basically erode core public safety structures, all without consequence. He talks about upzoning and increasing supply, but ultimately wants to shackle developers with extreme affordability mandates that would make new construction unviable. It's classic bait and switch progressivism. Nod to abundance, but legislate scarcity. So what makes this guy's rise even more alarming is that he's all the things I said earlier. He's charismatic, he's smart, he's got this extremely online presence and verve. And he's building a coalition that is not, really multi-ethnic, but it's somewhat multi-ethnic. And unlike many of his peers in the DSA, the Democratic Socialist of America, he actually is trying to win He's not just posturing. He's not just trying to tear it all down. And that's what makes him dangerous politically. He's figured out how to market radicalism with some discipline. So the policies remain extreme. But we're talking about a candidate who wants to ban newborn drug screenings in hospitals, limit child abuse investigations by ACS, Child Protective Services, essentially, in New York. He wants to reduce the city's ability to respond to threats against vulnerable children. That's part of his, approach to depolicing and, wanting to move toward this community model. None of that is compassion. It's institutionalized negligence. And at a moment when New Yorkers are desperate for order, stability, and housing they can afford, Mamdani is going to bring them, if elected. And if he follows through on the plans as he's designed them, a city government that would be bigger, slower, and weaker. So the danger isn't just that he wins, it's that he reshapes the Overton window in a city that desperately needs to pull back from the edge.
I would agree with that. And not only and someone who steelmans your argument a bit is Antonio Weiss. He was published today in the Daily News. And he has written quite a piece. I'm going to read just a little bit from it before we switch gears. He said, among the candidates, he says, among the candidates, Zohran Mamdani, who has surged to second position in primary polling, is most oblivious to the fiscal storm clouds approaching the city. He is basing his campaign on blue sky promises, universal city-funded child care from 6 weeks to 5 years old at a cost of more than $5 billion, free bus service, a major expansion of eligibility for rental subsidies, and even, as we spoke of, the city-owned grocery stores. He further proposes freezing rents on stabilized units and investing $70 billion in affordable housing. The problem with these proposals, they're impossible to fund. I mean, where the hell was Zohran going to get $70 billion? Let me see. What Mamdani fails to point out is that he repeatedly states, for example, that Mamdani suggests that his additional taxes would be easily absorbed by New Yorkers because of effing course, by New Yorkers, and that criticism of his approach is fear mongering because, it's not that communism doesn't work, it's that you're not doing communism enough. He repeatedly states, for example, that by increasing the state's corporate income tax by 4%, from its current level of 7.25, the revenue from which would apparently all be sent to the city, he would just be matching the corporate rate for New Jersey. Hardly a radical proposal. What Mamdani fails to point out is that corporations in the city are also required to pay a separate New York City income tax of 8.85% and an MTA surcharge equal to 30% of the state liability, or another 3.3% if Mamdani's 4% tax rate increase were adopted. Instead of corporations paying the same rate in New York City as they would in New Jersey, their actual corporate rate could approach 23.5%, more than twice that of New Jersey, and by far the highest in the country. And he closes, the attractiveness of Mamdani's proposals to voters is clear. His massive spending plans speak to real challenges facing New Yorkers, namely the cost of living crisis and our dire affordable housing shortage. But Mamdani's funding solutions are so disconnected from New York City's fiscal realities that they would amount to, at best, empty rhetoric, and at worst, significant harm to our city's fiscal stability. When Obama's people, when people who served under Obama are saying, no, we can't do this, that's a problem. That's a serious problem. But now I want to shift gears with your permission.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Yeah, because see, here's my issue, right? We can sit and riff on Zohran all day. We could riff on how Brad Lander looks like he's sweating every 30 seconds. Okay, how he looks really, really nervous and like he wants to pander, but he doesn't always. Like he literally looks like he's nervous and doesn't know what all he wants to say. Okay, we could talk about how Adrian Adams is only there really.
I'm going to say something nice about Brad
dissuade.
Lander. I'm going to jump in to say something nice about Brad Lander. He referenced the Manhattan Institute during the debate, the first debate. He said, "This is one idea that I took from the conservative Manhattan Institute." So one nice thing about Brad Lander. I would have felt bad if I came on and didn't say that one nice thing about Brad Lander. If you reference the Manhattan Institute publicly in a Democratic primary debate, no less, I'll give you a shout out on Isaiah's stream.
Well, I mean, communists always marry truth to lies. So, of course, whatever he referenced you guys for, he probably lied his ass off about it. I mean, that's what communists do. But here's my thing. Republicans need to be what's the word I'm looking for? Republicans have done a horrible, horrible job of getting good candidates to compete. I'm gonna go to something, and yeah, I'm gonna I gotta come after you. I gotta come after the party for this, and I want to start, and I'm gonna do so by reading this from our friend, from my friend Vicky Palladino, Councilwoman Vicky Palladino out of Queens. She wrote this masterful post earlier today. The grand irony of these No Kings protests is that the deep blue cities where they took place operate under an ironclad single party monopoly that more closely resembles an authoritarian regime than anything currently happening in Washington. In New York, about 85% of our council members are completely interchangeable politically. Yes, there are different personalities, but they vote identically. There's almost no debate and no dissent on 99% of what we pass. The speaker picks and chooses what is allowed a floor vote, and nobody steps out of line. Every progressive priority is rubber stamped with zero consideration. Every court is liberal. Local media is liberal. Errol Lewis. Most elections are uncontested. That's part of that's part of my question coming up. The mayor stepped slightly out of lockstep, and they threw him out of the Democrat Party. Were it not for our small caucus of seven conservatives, nearly every bill would pass unanimously, and nobody would even know another side existed. That's what blue city government is like. That's what the No Kings marchers vote for in their own local government. City, single party machine politics. And so the question I want to ask you, because I ran into this uncontested problem a couple years ago in a special election when I was living when I lived in Brooklyn. The city council candidate ran uncontested. Nearly every single open ballot position, like open elected position, all went uncontested. Nobody but Democrats are running. Nobody but Democrats are running. And that's a problem. Okay. The Republican candidate, and there's been a lot, like people have been treating, I'm just saying in my own travels, people have been treating the Democrat primary here as if it's a foregone conclusion that whoever wins the primary, the Democrat primary, is going to win the mayor's office, as if it's a foregone conclusion. Meanwhile, you have Curtis Sliwa running for mayor. This guy's out there. We spoke to him several weeks ago right here on this show. But people are acting as if he can't win, They're not giving him a chance. And ultimately, they're acting as if, it's just a foregone conclusion that Democrats just own this place. So my question to you is, with the recent election resulting, and by the recent presidential election, resulting in a voter shift towards the Republican Party, why is the Republican Party not treating local and state elections as competitive as they should be?
It's a tough question, because you're tempted in two directions, right? And I should say that I work for a nonpartisan organization, right? We're not officially Democrat or Republican. I think it's fair to kind of categorize us as more on the right than on the left on a lot of policy questions, if you go and look at the people that we write about. But I know for a fact I've got some colleagues within my midst who will be participating in the Democratic primary. And that's a choice that people have to make, right? There's a pretty strong argument for it too, right? When obviously we want to have a more competitive Republican Party, me speaking in my personal capacity as a Republican, we want to have a Republican Party that goes and competes for cities. But I actually don't know that everybody across our movement feels that way. So for example, like my organization, the Manhattan Institute, right? Like we don't write off cities across America as godless hellscapes that are governed by progressives and there's nothing we can do about it. So therefore the right thing is to just go live on a farm, take your wife, have some kids, and live a smaller life. I think there is a faction of the right that genuinely believes that. I think it's the same impulse.
Faction of the right that thinks that.
It's the same impulse as a lot of these Zoran guys, actually, right? It's degrowth. It's the principle that to have too much wealth is to do something immoral. To build too much is to destroy your environment. To innovate too much is to have the wrong social goals in mind. And unfortunately, there is a faction of the right that is picking up on a lot of those same threads. I'm not part of it. I want a bigger, faster, better, stronger America. I think what that means is that you do have to introduce some amount of ideological diversity into your party. You have to have some comfort with the fact that the kind of we know what it looks like when a Republican wins in a blue place, right? I mean, it was not that long ago that Rudy Giuliani was elected mayor of New York City. It was not that long ago that Arnold Schwarzenegger was elected the governor of California. Now, my folks live in Florida. I've got a lot of family in Florida. I think they'd be pretty disappointed. They're pretty conservative. I think they'd be pretty disappointed with Arnold Schwarzenegger type of Republican as the governor of the state of Florida. But that said, I've got some family in California as well. They're not so conservative, but if they were, I think they'd be thrilled to have somebody like Arnold Schwarzenegger. And that means you've got to be comfortable with people who are not going to check every box running for office in your party, which I'd say the current Republican Party is not. The current Republican Party is not making room for a lot of the types of candidates that could win. Now, having said all of that, we're gearing up for a very unique kind of situation in this mayoral election, right? We're going to have potentially 5 candidates. That will include the winner of the Democratic Party primary, most likely Andrew Cuomo, maybe it'll be Zohran Mamdani. Whoever comes in second, most likely again, Andrew Cuomo or Zohran Mamdani. Both of them could very well continue into the general election. Zohran Mamdani could run on the Working Families Party line if they offer it to him, and Andrew Cuomo has secured his own independent line to appear on the general election ballot if he so chooses. We do not have sore loser laws in New York, so those folks can continue on with the race. We know the sitting mayor of New York City, who has since changed his registration from Democrat to independent, Mayor Eric Adams, has stated that he intends to continue to run in the general election. You just mentioned the Republican candidate, Curtis Sliwa. And then we've got Jim Walden, who is another independent candidate who I've seen in some polls going as high as almost 7%. So, which is not insignificant, but it can take some meaningful votes away from some of these other folks. So what does that mean? That means somebody could potentially slip into Gracie Mansion with as low as 25-30% of the vote in the general election. Anything's possible. Donald Trump got nearly that in the general election in New York City just a year ago. So I think more likely than not, whoever wins the Democratic primary a week from Tuesday will be the mayor. But like you said, this election in particular, there's a lot of scenarios that could happen. And in that kind of a five-way race scenario, keep your eyes open. Some things could happen. President Trump could endorse, and that could be meaningful. President Trump could endorse Eric Adams, now rather than the Republican candidate. I think, and I like Mr. Sliwa a lot, but that's, there are a lot of different scenarios and possibilities that could potentially play out in this mayoral election. Buckle up for a chaotic another couple of months. This does not end.
But why do you think? But let me ask you this: why do you think? I mean, sure, but my question, but I do have to push back on that because I just don't see, me personally, I'm not seeing the kind of pushback that makes me or the type of consolidation behind a candidate or even fielding candidates who can win here in New York City. My issue is Vicky Palladino said there are only seven conservatives throughout the 5 boroughs in city council. 7. And that is a problem. I mean, especially when I think of how the country shifted rightward in the general election last year, when the country voted for Trump, nearly every county in the country had a rightward shift. Nearly every single one. And so my issue is not so much like in this particular case, it's not just the mayor's office, right? I'm concerned about city council, because when you only have 7 conservatives, 7 out of, yes, Jason, thank you. 7 out of 51 city council members are conservative. You have people in places like the Bronx and Queens, where Trump made his biggest gains in New York City. This was like, no one would have ever guessed that the Bronx would be the biggest county in New York that helped steer the country towards Trump. The Bronx. So my question to you is, if there's only 7 people, my grammar's terrible. If there are only 7 people in city council, and we know that in order to keep, to develop a firewall against communism in this city, because this is the most important city, like you said, why aren't the GOP trying to get more people to run in these places? Your thoughts?
It's a good question. I wish they were. But I think that to do it successfully, they'd have to create... Look, we once had an era in the United States where there was such a thing as a liberal Republican and a conservative Democrat, where both parties were really competitive across the country, where they created enough ideological diversity and accepted that as a reality within their camp and a reality of having competitive elections around the country, to say that we're going to have people in our party that come from the Northeast and people in our country that come from the South, and they're going to sound pretty different on a lot of issues. But in the years that have transpired since, party strength has dwindled, but political money centralization has strengthened. So with that, the result has been less ideological diversity within the parties, which has meant also more gerrymandering, which has meant less competitive elections. So all of those things are kind of a perfect storm, right? And let me point you to one example. So you actually have the reason that we have a Republican majority in the House of Representatives right now is because of the districts, the congressional districts outside of the New York area, where a lot of these Republicans just got over the hump, just barely got over the finish line. And a lot of them have communicated back to congressional Republicans in Washington if they do, around SALT relief, right? So to make a complicated issue more simple, that I'm sure a lot of your listeners, if they're in the New York area, are already familiar with, essentially, blue states have a certain amount of a tax credit because they tax at a much higher rate, so that the citizens who live there can, some of the taxes that they're already paying that are very high at the state and local level, that they can write off when they're paying their federal taxes. It's not, red state Republicans often make the case it's not really fair. We don't want to be subsidizing and encouraging the blue states to have these high tax rates. But it stinks for the people who live there, for the red people who live in blue states, right? So a significant delegation of these Republicans who come from blue states have made the case that they need SALT relief for their constituents. Otherwise, they can kiss their seats goodbye because Democrats will be elected, because people will have voted in these like northern Westchester districts for people like Mike Lawler. And then what will have happened? Their taxes will have gone up. And then they'll elect a moderate Democrat to replace them. So this is like one of those pesky problems that arises when you don't allow some degree of ideological diversity. Anyway, I yield.
And that's fine. I mean, I'm glad you answered as honestly. You answered as honestly as you could, and I really appreciate that. I mean, because
but more can be done is the answer. More can be done. It just means that you're not going to have someone who checks every box if you want to win. And also at the same time, like candidly, my feedback to a lot of people who are right of center or independent, there's not a competitive primary on the Republican side in this particular mayoral election in New York. Maybe it behooves a number of those people to go and participate in the Democratic primary to, fight back against an ultra progressive candidate from squeaking through. There's a real argument there.
But here's my question though, and again, I want to get back to, there seems to be, and again, for we spoke to Curtis Sliwa several weeks ago. We had him in studio. He talked with us for he could have talked to us for 4 hours. Okay. And my issue with, and I don't have my issue when it comes to him is the wider Republican Party seems to be skeeved out by this guy. And again, if there's an ideological rigidity that they're looking for, that the wider party is looking for when it comes to him, they're not going to get it. I mean, Sliwa could have been, like most Republicans these days, most I would say America First or MAGA types would have been Dems in the 1990s. You know what I'm saying? Like they would have been Clinton era Democrats, like people who made sense. And Sliwa definitely strikes me as one of those people. My thing is this: I don't understand. Like there just seems to be this hands off, like kind of we good type of feel when it type of energy that that I get when it comes to Sliwa, and I just don't understand. I mean, it's like if they don't like him because he's out in the streets, they think he's a crazy cat lady, or they think he's a crazy cat guy. And I'm like, well, that's not fair. I mean, like, what have you in your travels? What have you heard about Sliwa, and what actually have you heard anything that would give like have you heard any reasons from people within the party as to why they wouldn't want to get behind this guy? Because he seems like a really good candidate.
No, I haven't at all. And to my knowledge, I'm not really familiar with any Republicans in an official capacity who are unwilling to get behind him. I'm not in any kind of position or don't have any place of knowledge to talk about the distribution of funds or whatever. But on the contrary, this is, as I mentioned earlier, this is stacking up to be likely the most competitive election we've had in New York City for the mayor's office in a generation.
That's true.
The Republican hasn't had a better shot at winning office since the Giuliani Bloomberg era. And a five-way contest with four of those guys probably being registered Democrats. Are you kidding me? The odds couldn't get better. Now, having said that, it's worth talking about Eric Adams a little bit, who's a really interesting guy in his own right, who's been burned by the system, who I think could have done a lot of things better over the course of the last 4 years. I think he's probably the first guy to tell you that, actually, at some level. And I think he's an effective political talent. And I think the president thinks so as well. So the question becomes, where do you put your eggs, in what basket? Adams also, the further time goes on and we're removed from some of the previous controversies and he's out of the limelight of taking swings in this current election, he's kind of racking up wins, right? Like this containerization stuff around trash, it's no joke. The war on the rats is real. And the situation around trash. Go ahead.
You think it's a win? You think that's a win? Pardon me 1 second.
Yeah.
You think that's you believe that's a win for the forum?
I think there's definitely a way politically to turn it into one. I think that what do you think about containerization?
I think it's a backdoor way to steal parking spaces. I honestly
do. You feel the same way about it in Manhattan as you do about outer boroughs? Because what works in Manhattan might not necessarily work in Queens.
Well, I saw some of those containerized those bins. My fiance and I were traveling to. We went to a colleague of hers for a graduation party, and what I noticed was I saw several of these gigantic bins, and I'm like, well, first off, I shouldn't say gigantic. That's a bit exaggeration. They weren't as big as I thought they were. Okay. The second thing was, I just think they're just gonna they take up unnecessary space because they're placed right in the middle of they're placed on the curb, and they take up at least 2 to 3 parking spaces per block. If there's a block of 3 of them, they're taking up traffic. They're taking up parking spaces. And so what I tend to think about this, and again, I haven't seen them up here in the outer boroughs yet, though I'm sure they'll be in the usual places like Park Slope, Williamsburg, and all the rest. I just don't understand why they're even a thing. Because if you're talking about, the war on rats, okay, if you set the trash out on the curb, sanitation or somebody else was coming to get the trash off the block anyways. So the trash, so whatever bags of trash were already out there, they're not going to be. They weren't going to be sitting there long enough for rats to get into, at least in my opinion.
Right.
But on top of that, but the reason why I bring that part up is because yes, I do believe this is a wider war on cars because it's all part of uh, the same end around to make to make owning a vehicle just so abominably odious and tedious.
Yeah.
You know, if you gotta circle the block for 25 fucking minutes to look for parking, I mean, that's going to make you want to, well, at least the rationale that these communists think is there is that you're just going to give up your car and take public transit.
We're getting into a very interesting sub-debate, right? That I think the National Republican Party essentially has no strong view on, right? We could do the same thing about housing, right? I think Sliwa's views are probably around private development and some questions around like your adjacency to YIMBYism, probably a little bit closer to a more critical line than mine might be. Having said that, that's totally fine. That's well and good. But it's a challenge of urban politics, right? And it's a tension where it's like, what does it look like to be a conservative in a big blue city? Does it mean that you're protecting the interests of people who are living in the outskirts of that city, in the outer boroughs, who've got single-family homes and want their backyards and want some protection and some local control over zoning in their community? Or does it mean you take kind of the other legitimate, and those are your natural supporters, right? Those are the people who are going to be on your side on certain cultural issues around crime, around some of the social issues that are impacting New York. Or do you take kind of the more, I guess, traditional free market position of, upzoning? And do you win over some of that center left support that you might be able to steal away from the Democrats to be competitive in New York City elections? It's part of the challenge of why winning in very blue places is so difficult. And let's zone in more on the trash thing. So I don't want you to misread. I wasn't staking out my personal position. I was talking about, I think, from an analytical perspective, Adams will be able to say, I got something done while all the other guys were bickering about politics. My personal feeling is that the Mega Bin initiative is the kind of urban policy experiment that sounds clever in a press release, but sort of lands awkwardly on the street. You've got these hulking garbage containers. They may help reduce rat sightings, but they've also sparked backlash from the residents who see them as eyesores that swallow sidewalks, eliminate parking, and impose kind of like a one-size-fits-all vision of city life. It's a classic example of sort of the technocratic ambition colliding with neighborhood reality. It's the stuff we're talking about. But that said, like I said, there's a case to be made that this is a political win, at least in the short term. Adams is trying to project control over one of the city's most visceral quality of life issues, trash. For voters frustrated by filth and rodents, the optics of doing something big might matter more than the fine print. And in a fractured mayoral field, even a polarizing move can rally a base, especially when you've got kind of a weird coalition, right? Like, who is Eric Adams? He was elected as a Democrat, but he was kind of the anti-crime, moderate Democrat when he was elected. Then he got into office and he had a lot of favors to pay back to a lot of the unions. So he ended up governing more progressively than a lot of people expected him to. Then he got into trouble. The feds came after him during the Biden years. Trump had them ease up a little bit. He's gone to the White House a few times. He's since said, I'm no longer a Democrat, I'm an independent. He's been a great friend to the Jewish community. He's tried to, I think, be a friend to Asian families who want to preserve, want to see the charter cap lifted or want to see merit-based programs in schools continue. So the long-term risk here, I think, is still clear. A rollout, and to go back to the trash thing, right? A rollout that sort of feels imposed rather than earned, paired with like a confusing composting mandate, which is very bad, could reinforce the perception that City Hall is out of touch. But Adams might also win points for action. But whether he wins trust, I think, depends on how like these bins fit into a broader vision of livability that respects both sanitation and the street level experience of New Yorkers. But there's a lot of tensions at play here, and I think these are sort of unstructured thoughts, but I think we're landing in a place that actually does tell us something about why it's so why we have one party rule in a lot of these big blue cities, because it's a hard balance to strike.
It's a very hard balance to strike, and I'll be honest, I'm not entirely sure if I'm not entirely confident that a balance is going to that a balance can be struck. And the reason why I believe that is because the left in this town has just gone nuts. I mean, from the refusal to from the purging of the police department of cops who wouldn't take the vaccine, okay, to all of the bike lanes and the planter pots and all the other stupid shit that we see in the roads right now, to community board meetings being stacked with representatives from Transportation Alternatives and Riders Alliance and a lot of other, and all these other groups that really only represent the interests of less than 2% of the population of this town when it comes to bike lanes and the rest of the anti-car nonsense that these people want. What I'm afraid of is that there is a balance that just can't be. The tools aren't there. You only have seven out of 51 conservative council members. You don't like the infrastructure just isn't there, in my opinion, to make any lasting changes, because the other side have very well have basically their power is almost absolute. And so what I'm concerned about is the issues that are the people are not being served. Yeah. You had Darlene Mealy, or I think that's her first name, Darlene Mealy, Diane Mealy, whatever her name is. This lady had ads bought and paid for by Uber and Lyft. She's running for city council. I think she's running for re-election to city council. Why are Uber and Lyft, who are the primary reasons why there is so much congestion, 150,000 extra cars put on the road a year because of these people? Like, there are real issues here, and I just don't think, and that goes back to my earlier point, which is Republicans aren't I don't know if they're not prepared, if they don't understand the issues, or if they just figure, or like I think you talked about it earlier, where they just figure, New York's a lost cause.
I don't know. I just don't get it. You are raising interesting questions, right? Because it's like, I also don't want the Republican Party to come anchor itself in New York City and be the primary opponent of Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, all these groups. Like, every Andrew Cuomo mailer I see, and I in my personal individual capacity, not speaking for anybody else, I think New York would be in a better place if Andrew Cuomo is the mayor than probably some of the other more progressive challengers that we've spoken about tonight. But like, I see on a lot of Andrew Cuomo mailers, signed off and paid for by DoorDash at the bottom. And I don't know. I mean, like, to some extent, you want obviously the Republican Party to be the party of innovation and enterprise. But obviously, you also want a city that works, and a city that works for the people who live in it.
Absolutely.
Going back to like some of the debates around congestion pricing, I think the impulse immediately of everybody on the right, or at least most people I'm associated with on the right, was to be viscerally against it. And I said, and that was kind of where I was too, as someone who like occasionally has to drive uptown. But I feel like I almost, before I could even debate the concept of congestion pricing, right? In theory, theoretically, if a city, has a lot of people in it and wants to push people toward public transit rather than being in their own cars, okay, maybe. But like, how can you even begin to have that conversation until the subway is safe? How are you going to be pushing people to public transit when it's a disorder zone? When you've got people doing drugs in public transit, when you've got people blaring music in the public transit system, when you've got people getting killed at higher rates annually in the public transit system than you've had in a very long time on record.
Yeah.
So it's almost like it's moot, right? Like, why are you? You know what? Focus on the task at hand. Government at a basic level has to keep people safe. Okay, that's what you have to do before you're tasked with playing games around the flow of traffic or any other stuff. Why don't you deal with the thing that every poll after poll after poll tells us is the top concern of New Yorkers, which is public safety? And by the way, don't just point to the murder rate. And when that thing ticks down a little tiny bit, the homicide rate, you tell me New York is way safer than it was previously, until you've done something about disorder. My colleague Charles Fain Lehman writes about this a lot. It's not just the homicide rate. It's, can you walk around with your kid, take the subway and feel safe? Do you see a homeless encampment on the way to your kid's daycare? Do you see a guy shooting up drugs when you're walking to get on the train in the morning? Do you see needles on the ground outside of your apartment when you go to get your coffee? These are all things that matter in creating a city. Does it smell like pot everywhere? Okay. These are all questions that are important ones for people who live in a city and are thinking about policy making in a city to consider deeply, all the more so if you're someone with conservative sensibilities.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I mean, my sensibilities is as a voter. My sensibilities as a voter are as follows. I just don't want communists in anything. I hate to say
that's a good first principle to work from.
Yeah. I mean, I find that to be really kind of the only principle, in fact, because I know it sounds very generic, right? Like communists, they just, why are communists everywhere? Well, we are currently living through the culmination of that long march through the institutions that started in the 1960s. And unfortunately, we have all of these people, these radical, again, all of this has been on display this weekend. All of this has been on display this weekend, where we've seen these people radicalized in the streets. You've got Antifa in Black Bloc. Eric Adams even talked about it. You know what? Give me just 30 seconds, just real quick. I'll be right back.
I'm just looking at these comments on the side here. I haven't seen these yet. A lot of Jason.
Okay, I'm back. Let me just turn my camera back on. Okay, so yeah, like we're living through the long march through the institutions. Jason just put this here. There was an estimated 700 plus people in Black Bloc at a protest downtown this week. Why is that a thing? Why do we have black clad Antifa? Why do we have communist berserkers in downtown Manhattan? Okay. And according to Jason, he says huge uptick numbers wise. We are living in, someone said that we are currently in the Bolshevik Revolution. Yeah. So like first principle for me is get communists out, because they are intentionally, like when I think about guys like Zoran, they are out to crash the system. But in order to protect the system, you gotta have capable candidates who actually care and want to return, and well, not just return, but they want to return and protect this country from infiltration. So there are just so many concerns that I have. I think this has been a productive conversation. This really has been. And like I said, I just wonder, like, where, like, what do you think is in store for New York City in the next few months and the next few years? Like, what do you see?
I'm thinking a lot about the economic situation, honestly. New York's next mayor won't just be inheriting a city with budget problems or housing shortages. He's inheriting a value prop crisis, right? So, like post-COVID, New York has become a tougher sell for workers, for families, and for the businesses that once made the Big Apple sort of indispensable. Taxes are sky high. Public services are mid-tier at best. And the housing is priced for ghosts. Like, meanwhile, the city is spending, is depending more and more on a shrinking pool of high earners to foot the bill for an expanding welfare state and migrant services apparatus. The good news is that a smart mayor could turn it around. That would mean cutting dead weight in the city's bureaucracy, a Doge for, Manhattan, so to speak, embracing automation to boost public sector productivity, and redirecting savings to the core services, public safety, clean streets, functional schools that reward merit. It also means ending no-bid migrant hotel contracts, consolidating the shelter system, those that were like kept separate from for political optics reasons. That's not efficient. And at the center of all of it is the housing questions that we talked about earlier, right? So the city needs to make it cheaper to live and to build in New York. That's how you stop the talent bleed and give middle-class families a reason to bet on New York's future. So fixing the economy here, it's not about chasing tech unicorns or flashy green woke jobs. It's about making life livable again for the strivers who built the city in the first place. It's the working regular people. It's not about building a city for protesters.
You ain't and on top of that, you ain't building a city that works for regular New Yorkers by building towers with $11,000 a month apartments in Hunters Point, Queens. You're absolutely right. Like you mentioned that earlier. A city that works. You're like I just a city that is, like you said, just less expensive. I don't think that that Democrats are even interested in it, because I'm sorry, like cops and firefighters, transit workers, EMS, these people should not be struggling to live here. They shouldn't be. Like they're the people that keep this place going. transit workers literally keep the city moving, for Christ's sakes. Why are they struggling to live here? Why are so many people going out to Jersey and Connecticut and even in like what parts of Westchester County and Long Island? Like when I first moved up here, I wanted to like my whole goal was I want, like, as long as I'm working, as long as I have my career, I want to stay right here in the 5 boroughs, because I see what these people go through. I see what coworkers go through who live in Jersey, who live in the Poconos and stuff like that, and they driving in here. Obviously they did what needed to be done for their own families, but this city's not working for people anymore. And that's a big concern. Last thing before you go, Jesse, our friend has given us a bit of a thought experiment. What would grow and what would fall apart if Zoran wins? Let's hear your thoughts on that.
I kind of think that's been the whole conversation, right? What would grow? The number of people using drugs, the number of people who are homeless in the subway system, the level of disorder you see around Manhattan, and the level of crime, definitive crime, right? Homicide rates, all of that would uptick if we scale back police funding and do the things that hardcore progressives like Mamdani want to do in New York. And I think actually also revenues might go down as well, because you'd alienate so much of the tax base. So you'd think that'd be maybe the one saving grace, right? That you'd be able to, pitch back into the deficit the city faces and recoup some funds from raising taxes. But that'll prove difficult too, with the tax base heading for the hills. What will grow, that was what will grow. Yeah. So what will shrink, or I guess what would fall apart was what Jason wrote. But I think it follows pretty naturally from everything I just said, right? What would fall apart? The city's police force, the sense of community. But I do think that's kind of the goal. Right? It's to incept radical revolution here in this city, to watch the system break, and then to consolidate power behind a socialist who says the solution is just to concentrate even more power within government, so government can bring you the answers. It's not how I feel. It's not how Republicans and independents, when polled, typically feel. And it's not how a majority of Democrats feel about core policy questions either. But there's an undefined candidate who's pretty effective in front of the camera and a pretty good communicator, who might be able to convince them otherwise when he remains undefined and when he's only telling half the story.
Well, Jess, I want to thank you for coming on to the show tonight. This has been quite a productive conversation. I've learned quite a lot from you tonight, and I am grateful that you came by, and you are more than welcome to come by anytime you like. So thank you so much thank you again for your time, and it's been great. Anything before I let you go though? Are you working on anything? Are you anything you want to anything else you mentioned some earlier some new reporting that's coming out. So what are you working on?
Yeah, I'll just preview and say that we'll be releasing some polling through the Manhattan Institute in the next day or two about the New York City mayoral race and a lot of the policy questions that we've discussed here tonight. I've gotten an early look at the data, and I think it's really illuminating. And it paints a picture of the race that I think is a little bit different than the one that any number of the campaigns are sort of trying to push and advance right at this moment. So it should be really interesting to dig into. And I think a lot of your listeners will have fun diving into the data. So keep an eye for that. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Jesse Leg, Jesse _Leg. It's written right here. And I'll be sure to post it out as soon as it's ready.
Thank you so much, man. I laugh because your X handle just gets me every single time. I'm like,
you had to confirm
like,
whether my name was actually Jesse Legg or Jesse Arm before we got on. I think I made my X when I was in like middle school or something like that. So it's just kind of stuck ever since. Before it was X.
I was like, this guy's such a wise ass. Like, this is great. Jesse, thank you once again for coming on, man. You are incredible, and I look forward to much, much more from you. Thanks again, brother. I appreciate you.
Thanks for having me, and you have a great night.
You too, man. Thank you. And there you have it. That is a good, that is a fantastic gentleman in Jesse. I really, really appreciate him coming by. Oh boy, we've covered a lot of ground tonight, and man, it's almost like where do we go from here? Well, I'll tell you. One, I want to I want to get into some of the good stuff this week. I feel like unfortunately there's been a lot of things that have been happening, but what I first want to do is I really want to get into the good stuff. This past week I was on vacation from the 9 to 5, and I got to spend a little time with my co-host, Mr. Nostra Chavez. He actually got me to try a Pete's. He did it. He got me to try some very, very good Pete's. We went to this place not too far from him up in the land of Pete's. And just share one photo of him and I this past actually it was last week, and I don't know why these things are just coming in so grainy. Anyways, there we go. Let me just share this here. Yeah, this brother and I, I'm really, really grateful to Nos for his presence in my life. Without him, this show would absolutely be nothing, and I'm really grateful to him. Nursing an injury tonight, as we talked about, he has definitely, like I said, he has my prayers, and he's I hope he's okay. So to the Pete's, yes, to the Pete's. Well, the Pete's was actually pretty good. Went to this place called Sally's. And a pizza is actually pretty good. It's just it's thin crust pizza with a char on it, and really good toppings. Really, really good toppings. I was quite happy with that this past week. But there's something I want to. There is one thing that's been that I would be remiss if I did not discuss. And that is how the great American crash out has just been, it's taken a fatal turn. Relax says, never seen that DC jersey. Looks like you got it signed by the team. I did not. I'm wearing that jersey. This is the Cherry Blossom kit. It's DC United's. It was their 22 to 23 secondary. No, I'm sorry, 23-24 away kit. And it's ironically one of the best ones they've come out with. The cherry blossoms being a very like an iconic like when people think of DC, they think of the cherry blossoms. And this is ironically, this is actually my fiance's favorite a soccer kit that came out that year. So that's so it's pretty good. Shout to Danita Johnson, the president of business operations at DC United, who actually got this thing, who actually helped to design this work of art. So, but getting into the great American Maoist crash out. Matter of fact, before I do, let me just see if I can. Matter of fact, I have a very good picture of me and my fiance that I can share. Hold on, let me just go down here. Because I want y'all to see this. I want y'all to see both me and my. Hold on. I'm trying to scroll through this because so now what's going on is my since Nos is not here, I'm going to be basically this is just me going off on my own little tangents, which is fine. Hope y'all will put up with me a little bit. But I'm looking for, come on, where is it? Where is it? Bear with me a second here. Because I have this really nice picture of the two of us rocking here we go. I found it. Now, this damn thing will just won't okay, it cleared up. There we go. So let me just bring this up. See? Me and my lady rocking this and the shorts to the kid. We were full kit. It's from last year. We went to the Atlantic Cup up down in Harrison, New Jersey. DC come up and DC comes up and play New York Red Bulls every year. We make it a point, my fiance and I, to go to every match when DC United come up. So, but anyways, let's get into this. Things have been quite violent this week. No kings. We've been, that's been the theme all week long, all weekend long. No kings, whatever. But y'all need to understand something. I go back to what Jesse Kelly said. Okay? Violence is not something that the communist does. It is who the communist is. Violence is in the communists' DNA. It is in their genetic makeup. Their entire existence is violence. Their entire existence, the communist very existence, is death. Don't believe me? Have a look at this from this past week, from Friday.
Are there reasons to believe that these events were also targeted by the person in the manifesto in the car?
I know that people will be hurt by that vote, and we worked very hard to try to get a budget deal that wouldn't include that provision.
DFL Speaker Emerita Melissa Hortman emotional following the House's adjournment from a special session Monday. Hortman was the lone DFL lawmaker to cast a vote to cut Minnesota Care access for undocumented immigrants. It's a move she made with a heavy heart.
I did what leaders do. I stepped up and I got the job done for the people of Minnesota.
The bill was deeply unpopular with members of the DFL caucus. Members have repeatedly expressed frustration that the bill was part of a compromise, one that would ensure the necessary GOP votes to pass the rest of the state budget.
We are tremendously disappointed and gut-wrenched at this decision, at this compromise that compromises our communities that are most vulnerable.
Hortman knows she let down her own caucus members with the vote.
They're right to be mad at me. I think some of them are pretty angry. I think that their job was to make folks who voted for that bill feel like crap, and I think that they succeeded.
Over in the Senate, a similar situation unfolded. Senate Majority Leader Erin Murphy forced to vote for a bill she too disagreed with to uphold the integrity of their compromise.
This one hurt. This one is a wound because of its reason. My colleagues across the aisle set this as their number one priority.
Asked whether the move would drive a wedge between her and the rest of her caucus, her DFL colleague, Senator John Marty, quickly stepped to her defense.
As a member of the caucus, yes, sir, she clearly was fighting against it every step of the way. In the negotiations, if we wanted a budget, we had to agree to that. She agreed to put up one vote for us because of that.
Reporting in St. Paul, I'm Quinn Gorham.
That lady ended up dead. Yes, it's true. That lady and her husband were murdered earlier this week, a couple days ago. Melissa Hortman was taken out, allegedly, by a 57-year-old named Vance Bolter. According to, let me see, our reporting done by Nick Sorter, of course. Breaking, the suspect who assassinated, I'm going to use that terminology, who assassinated Representative Melissa Hortman this morning, and that was June 14th, has been identified as 57-year-old Vance Bolter, law enforcement tells Julio Rosas. Bolter was a Tim Walz appointee to one of the governor's boards. So congratulations. A communist murdered Melissa Hortman and her husband. A political assassination took place because Representative Hortman, Speaker Emerita Hortman, voted against giving more of Minnesota's money to illegal immigrants. That's who we're up against. That is who we are up against. Tim Walz was real quick. Tim Walz was very, very quick to get people to tell people to stay away from the No Kings rallies that were planned in his state. Okay, but let's be clear about something. The entire No Kings ridiculousness was overshadowed by the fact that a fucking communist could not help himself and took out that woman for failing to comply with the will of the machine state. That's what that was. And if you don't believe me, Data Republican, shout out to her, Data Republican came out with quite an extensive profile on this guy. Vance Bolter, the suspect in today's shooting, from yesterday, was the CEO of an international NGO called the Red Lion Group. But I couldn't find any photographs or digital records of its work, only a generic website. The Red Lion Group appears to have run out of funding a month or two ago, as that is when he started looking for executive level roles. and then Truther, and then the Investigative Examiner, also heavy in the global workforce movement, which seeks to bring migrants into the U.S. for work. Dude was heavy into WEF propaganda. I want to make sure that stays up there for a little bit. Ladies and gentlemen, what you have here once again is you have the communist you have a Democrat who was taken out by a communist. No kings though, right? So at these events where you had just ridiculousness, okay? You had, matter of fact, I'll give you this from the police chief, there in Minnesota.
Are there reasons to believe that these events were also targeted by the person in the manifesto in the car?
We don't have any direct links. However, there were some flyers that said no kings within the suspect vehicle. And as we know, the planned events throughout the state of Minnesota today is a no kings event.
And so the reference materials that were inside of the vehicle that we saw, we have no understanding that any of the no kings events would be targeted, but we also find it of interest to the public that these would be in there, and we want to alert everybody until we do that. Because this is such an active investigation with information not knowing right now, we feel it's an obligation to all of you and the public across the state of Minnesota to alert you of it, and that's why the Colonel made the notation of recommending people don't go today. But the individuals are not in custody yet, and so we want to make sure as that very active manhunt is underway and continues that we make sure that we're sharing that, and that's part of why we're making the...
Is this what you want? Seriously, folks, I want y'all to, I really want to ask people this question. Is this the type of country that you want to live in? I think it's a valid question to ask. Is this the type of place that you want to live in? Is this how you want to raise your kids? Do you want to raise your children in a society, in a country where if you go against the will of the machine, you could lose your life? No kings, right? No kings, but this is a country, but now this is a country where if you vote against the will of the machine state, you might very well lose your life. And then, of course, you'll have leftist media run cover for you, run cover for your killer, as MSNBC certainly tried to do. That's who we're up against. I've never seen anything in my life where I've never seen such a dysregulation of Democrats. We're violent. They're violent now. They've threatened Supreme Court justices. They threaten people regularly on the streets. I mean, I've got proof. I've got proof of all of that. Like I give you a little bit of this.
You need a bigger sign. Bigger sign.
Go home, fascists. Go home, fascists. Go home, fascists. You're not welcome here.
Why I'm fascist?
Because you support that guy.
He's not fascist.
Yes, he is.
He's not.
Then you don't know what a fascist is.
Okay, then you're wrong.
Go home, fascists! Go home, fascists! Go home, fascists!
Let's go.
Go home, fascists!
Why don't you go closer, sir? You need to go closer.
Go home, fascists!
Oh yeah.
Go home, fascists! Go home, fascists!
You're so racist, you know.
You're a racist.
You're
racist.
No, you are.
You're a racist.
You came here to scream.
Racist.
You came to scream.
I don't care what race you are.
At what point do we begin to realize that is what we are actually up against? I mean that. At what point do we realize that communists are the number one threat? They are the biggest problem in this country. Stewart said neither of those clips show threats. Go home isn't a threat. You really want to know who these people are? You already know what they are. You already know who these people are. You want to? I'll be more than happy to show you stuff, but I don't think you'll like it. I don't think you'll like it. Matter of fact, let me see if I can find one right here. Yeah. Brandy Cruz. Yeah. I'll show you this. Show you this right here. Here we go. Black math. Oh, yeah. See that? You see that? Do you see it?
I support
Great.
White tears won't save you from Nazis.
It'll be you next to that goon.
Don't. Hey. So when you touch me with that sign,
Just don't touch.
when you touch me with that sign, it's assault. Okay.
Go home.
So you're okay to be in my face, but don't touch me with that sign.
Hey, shut up.
Are you convinced yet? Are you convinced yet? Are you convinced yet? That's who these people are. Violent, nasty. They'll kill you. They will unalive you. Bottles of water. They were throwing rocks at police cars. They were setting fire to cop cars in Los Angeles. They were literally tearing apart Waymo vehicles, cars that are unmanned, driving around for no reason at all. They were fighting with police, throwing boulders at police through their cars. Oh, but that's not violent. Again, if you want to live in this country, if you want to live in a society where these people have free reign to do whatever they want to you, where they can completely and totally take away your right to defend yourself, they expect you, communists expect you to just simply sit around and let them do whatever they want to you. If they want to mob your vehicle, if they want to mob your vehicle, if they want to break your windows out and have you sitting in traffic, again, think about this. You think that's something? Again, I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to the video, to this video here.
Look at this. Then what happens to my kid? But you can if you could just move out the way. You're not going to. How is this a peaceful protest if there's nothing to do? No, it's not.
How do y'all as white people feel about stopping a black woman from going to work?
Oh no, not work.
Being held against your will on a busy Soho street in Manhattan is absolutely violence. I'm going to say that again. Being held against your will on a busy Manhattan street or any urban center is violence. It is actual violence. Two white leftists holding a black woman hostage and then laughing about it. We're talking about two people who one of whom has a very high profile, high paying job, and the other one is a bum ass motherfucker who made $115,000 off of a settlement with the city of New York. Who makes money off of protesting. Is this the America you actually want? Because if it is, then it's here. But if it's not, you're going to have to get involved. These people would see you dead. Communists are evil people who would eradicate all of society if it meant they could, if it meant they'd rule over the ashes. Doubt these people if you want. But that is who we are up against. Play games with these people if you want. Let these people take every single one of your freedoms if they want. Let them build their cult of the state. If let them just do it. Let them do it. Go ahead. See if the Jean-Paul Sartre attempt works. It worked pretty well for France, didn't it? No kings. Half these people were out here this weekend. They were doing the bidding of Neville Roy Singham, a guy who lives in Shanghai and works directly for the People's Republic of China. He is a propaganda artist. He's become a billionaire as a result of it, and he has specialized in making content designed to mess with the masses on behalf of the Communist Party of China. Y'all were out here doing their bidding, doing his bidding. If you went to a No Kings protest this weekend, you endorse domestic terrorism. Yes, I'm saying it right now. The previous administration was putting people on terror watch lists for saying men can't be women. Speaking actual truth. Sorry, we're holding you to your own standard, communist. That's what we're doing today. That's what we're doing right now. And we're going to make sure that this little movement gets broken. We're going to break the teeth of this movement. We're going to find out who else is funding you. We're going to find out all this, and we're going to end this communist movement once and for all in the United States. This stops now. It's a new day, and we're going to handle business like Americans. And with that, that's the end of our show. I hope you have a great rest of the night. Thank you all for joining us next week. Hopefully, Nos will be back. But next week we are going to have, let me just make sure that let me just check the calendar here. Next week we are going to have Frank McCormick. Mr. Chalkboard Heresy himself will be joining the show next week, next Sunday at 8 p.m. Looking forward to having him on. Looking forward to seeing you all here next week. at the same time. So until now, for my boy Nostra Chavez, this is Isaiah Carter. Thank you again. If you want to support the show, please do so at buymeacoffee.com/apostate radio. And also you can follow us at Apostate Radio NY. Thank you so much. We will see you next Sunday.